1. So this started about a month after I turned 19, and I recently just turned 20. And this is still ongoing. About a year ago, my mom got the opportunity to open a small store. The location of this place is inside of like a multi-purpose building. This building is actually a former asylum that's been reconstructed into a thriving little location. But this isn't a ghost story. My mom's store is like an indoors farmer's market. We're at the end of the building. There's only one room after us, and that room is a small cafe. When we first started up this store, we had a lot of friendly customers that would come in and out. My mom would bring in her baked goods and canned goods and sell them. After a week in, there was one man that stood out to me. I had seen him in the building before, but never in our part of it. He was usually in the consignment shop or in one of the art rooms. But one day he finally came in. My first impression of him was immediately negative. He walked across the room towards me and my mom, and he called over, "Ah, there's a girl with crazy hair over there," talking about me and my, at the time, bright pink hair. Now, I get that my hair can be a conversation starter, but it's one thing to give me a compliment about it, and it's another thing to call it crazy from across the room when I don't even know you. We learned that his name was Stanley. He was an older gentleman, about 60. He had shabby grey hair, pretty tall, and a constant dull expression on his face, even when he smiled and laughed. On the way home that day, I told my mom that he was obnoxious and annoying, and that I didn't quite care for him. But we both ended up shrugging it off. No big deal, right? The next time he came in, he once again rubbed me the wrong way, but also gave me slight creeps. He was wandering around, and kept looking over to where my mom and I sat behind the counter. My mom informed me that she was going to go to the next room to order us some lunch. As soon as she left, Stanley came walking over. "There's the girl with the crazy hair," he laughed. "It's still pretty crazy, huh?" I laughed it off, as he tried hitting up a conversation with me. He made me pretty uncomfortable. Eventually, my mom came back in. He turned the conversation on my mother. It stayed pretty casual. He bought something, then left. I told my mom how aggravated he made me. He eventually started coming in all the time. Each time it was the same thing. "I see the girl with the crazy hair. Your hair is still a crazy color." After a while, I stopped responding to him, and my mom would take the conversation into her hands. He started asking me random things like if I was single or if I smoked. It made me angry. I barely knew the guy, and it was none of his business. Eventually, my mom recruited other vendors to sell stuff. The other vendors rarely came in. We always just sold their stuff for them. My mom's friend started sitting with us during the day and helped us with things. Her name was Meredith. Eventually, I started sitting far back behind the counter where the cash register was if I saw Stanley coming in. I would leave it up to Meredith and my mom to deal with him. I even began putting my earphones in. I would never actually turn my music on, though. I pretended to. But really, I listened as Stanley tried hitting up conversations with me. I wanted to know what he was saying. I would ignore him and act as if I didn't even see him. "She always has those earphones in," I heard him chuckle to my mom and Meredith one day. "Oh shit," I thought to myself. Then my stomach turned one day as I heard him say something else to my mom. "She's a very cute girl. How old is she?" "She's 19, my mom told him. I was angry that my mom would even answer that question. It was none of this dude's business. Then, of course, he went on about my hair again, which was, at that point, purple. The thing that began making me angry was that he would always comment on my hair. But the thing is, Meredith also had purple hair. She always had dyed her hair purple, but he never said anything to her about it. It was always just my hair. I found that odd. One day while I was driving us home, I noticed that my check engine light was on. I told my mom, and we had my older brother look at it when he got home from work that night. He told us that he checked everything and nothing seemed wrong. Then, out of curiosity, he checked my gas cover. It was gone. Somebody stole my gas cap. I immediately told my mom that I bet it was Stanley. I don't know why he would have done it, but he always parked next to my car when he came. And he had been there that day. We told Stanley about it, and he didn't have much to say, which made me even more suspicious. Of course, we have no solid proof that it was him. My mom is required by the state to put her name, address, and phone number on all of the food products that she makes and sells, just in case a customer needed to contact her. Which means, of course, Stanley had all that info. He began calling our house. Yes, we still have a house phone. And the first few times he would call and tell my mom things like, "Your bread was a little dry," or "I tried your relish, it was a little bland." Things like that. Then one day my mom totally freaked me out. She said that Stanley had called and was asking questions about me. She didn't really say what kind of questions, but she also said that he was saying that I was a very pretty girl, and all that crap. He never once mentioned my mom's food. The conversation apparently stayed on me. One of my mom's friends that does the store with her, Jean, is certified to take care of mentally handicapped and disabled people. She takes care of a girl named Christy. Christy is about 30. She can walk and talk, but has the mentality of a young child. Jean would bring her into the store sometimes with her. Stanley once again called my house and began telling my mom how Christy was a very pretty girl and that she had a wonderful smile and that kind of shit. It creeped my mom out, and she immediately called Jean and told her to make sure Christy was never left alone while in that building. This kind of garbage continued happening. Eventually, the cafe next to us was switched out with a different owner. The new owner, Tiffany, was a 30-year-old married mother of 3 young kids. One day we were in talking to her since it was a slow day. My mom looked out the window and said, "Ah, crap, Stanley's here." And his old blue van pulled into the parking lot. Yes, the creep drives a van. Tiffany sort of laughed and said, "You guys don't like him either." We told her no, and that I found him very creepy. Tiffany informed us that he lived on the same street as her. She said that she couldn't stand the creep. She told us that he would drive by her house slowly sometimes, and peer into her windows to see if she was in their kitchen. Every time he saw her, he would make comments like, "There's that pretty tiny thing," or "There's the pretty young thing." I began telling her about all the weird stuff he had said and done to us, and she told me to stay away from him. Meredith's husband rents a room in the same building, and he sells his paintings out of. He told us one day that Stanley would always go to his room first, before venturing down to our end of the building. He told my mom that he would always ask if my mom and I were there, and if he said no, then Stanley would leave. If he said yes, then Stanley would begin asking questions about me. He also told us that there was a few occasions that he found Stanley standing outside of his studio window, just staring at him. Then when he realized he was caught, he would just smile and wave before going inside. Things began getting worse. We informed the owner of the building, and she told us not to be rude to him because it was bad for her business. Thanks, lady. Stanley began doing strange things like informing my mom that he still had food from her that he bought months before. My mom would tell him not to eat it, and that it was probably no good by now. He would just laugh. He brought in a dish made from those little Christmas mints that my mom had made, and that he had bought in December. It was like April at the time, and it was all broken. He told my mom that he dropped it, and asked if he could have a refund. My mom said no, and that he shouldn't even still have it. It had to have been stale. He even went so far as crumpling up one of my mom's cookies in front of us, then asking for a refund because the cookie was nothing but crumbs. One day I was forced to run the registers since it was just my mom and I at the store, and she doesn't know how to run it. Stanley had come in and was talking to my mom. I had my iPhone sitting on the counter next to me. Yes, I know that seems non-professional, but the store isn't really a professional store anyways. It's very laid back in that sense, but anyways. I never lock my phone, and Stanley had seen my background. Then out of the blue asked, "Can I see your pictures?" I looked up at him and just kinda blinked. I wasn't sure what he meant. He gestured to my phone and asked again. I was super taken aback by this request. He was asking to go through the pictures on my phone. My mom, of course, didn't say or do anything to help me, so I held up my phone and briefly showed him my background picture, which thankfully wasn't anything personal. My background was a picture of 5 seconds of summer. The 4 band members standing in like a hallway. He frowned when he saw what it was, and asked if it was a picture of my friends. Keeping it short and sweet, I said no. Then he asked if I knew them. I said no, it was just a band that I listened to. Thinking back on it, I should have told him that yes, I knew them, and maybe it would have steered him away a bit, thinking that I had these 4 close large guy friends. The next day was once again just my mom and I. Stanley, of course, showed up. As he was walking towards us, he saw me and jokingly said, "Who's that strange girl sitting over there?" My mom, trying to joke back, said, "It's a hitchhiker I picked up." Then Stanley nodded and said, "Yeah, I'd pick her up too." It creeped me the fuck out. Later that day, I was telling Tiffany about it while we ordered lunch. She told me that if he gives me a hard time, that I was more than welcome to go and sit in the kitchen with her until he leaves. I told my dad that night about Stanley. He decided that he was going to come to the store with my mom and I the next day. He wanted to meet this guy. The next day, my dad was introduced to Stanley. Stanley asked if my dad knew me. My dad said, "That's my daughter." And Stanley nervously chuckled. Then he tried asking my dad about work and stuff. My dad wasn't having any of it. He gave him short answers to everything and acted very uninterested. Finally, Stanley caught on that my dad didn't care for him too much. "Are you staying all day?" Stanley finally asked him. My dad told him yes. Stanley kind of grunted in disapproval. My dad asked me to show him around the building since it was actually his first time being there. And Stanley slowly began following us, trying to see if my dad was actually staying all day. My dad and I went outside for a little while and stood by my dad's truck. We pretend to look at the new grill he had just bought. But really, my dad was waiting for Stanley to leave, so that he could leave as well. Stanley stood by us and tried talking to my dad some more. He again asked if he was staying, and my dad said yes. That was the most my dad would say to him, though. Finally, Stanley got frustrated and said, "All right, well, bye," then left. I thank God for Tiffany. Every time she sees that Stanley is in the building, she comes in and asks if she can have my help with something in the kitchen. Likely moving boxes or something. I always say yes. There's of course no boxes for me to actually move. She just says that so I can get away from him. The most recent time this happened, Stanley saw me go into the kitchen. He stood by the cafe counter and tried talking to Tiffany, and her hired help, Darcy. "Where's all the young girls in there?" I heard him ask. Darcy spoke up, being a mother of 2 young kids as well, and said, "Sorry, no young girls here." "You're not a young girl?" he asked her. Darcy is in her late 20s. Darcy shook her head and frowned, then responded with a no. I was standing in that kitchen for about an hour while Stanley was out talking to my mom and Meredith. Once he was gone, my mom informed me that he was asking where I was. My mom told him that I was helping Tiffany and Darcy in the kitchen, and Stanley responded with a, "Oh, I knew I saw her out there somewhere." The next thing is a story from Tiffany. She told me that her son, who is in 6th grade, was riding his bike with another boy, and their female friend was walking a bit behind them. They were going by Stanley's house, and Stanley went outside. He said something to the girl like, "Oh, you don't have a bike?" Then he offered her a ride, even though she was with her friends. It freaked the girl and Tiffany's son out. Tiffany's son knew how much of a creep Stanley was since he creeped by their house a lot, and he has witnessed the way Stanley looks and talks to me. Her son even told her that he saw Stanley looking me up and down one day, which does not make me happy. On another occasion, Stanley was telling us that he used to be certified to take care of people with disabilities, just like Jean was. But he got his license for that taken away one day for having a girl at his house. He told us that he tried to have her hide her car so people didn't know she was there, but Stanley's girlfriend called the cops and reported him. My mom couldn't understand why having a girl at his house would have that kind of consequence. I told my mom that it had to have been something illegal, like maybe a prostitute or maybe an underage girl. Our store is in the middle of a bunch of apartment buildings, and there's a small road that loops around all of the buildings. Well, just yesterday I was bored out of my mind, and right across the road in the cemetery there are Pokestops and a gym for Pokemon Go. So I decided to go for a walk to hatch my eggs, hit up the Pokestops, and catch some Pokemon. I was walking the loops, and I looked up for a second to see Stanley's stupid blue van driving around the loop, heading towards the store. I put my head back down, and he drove right by me. He didn't even slow down. So I sighed with relief and kept walking. He apparently didn't see me. He was still in the building when I returned, but was in the cafe bothering Tiffany. My mom pulled me aside and told me that Stanley walked up to her and said, "So, your daughter doesn't get into people's cars." I told my mom that he didn't even stop and offer, but my mom was still freaked out that that was even in his mind. It has me pretty freaked out too. And just now, my mom told me that she just found a message from Tiffany that said, "Oh my fucking god. No matter where I go, I can't get away from Stanley. I went to the store and he parked right next to me." Obviously, this is all still happening. I don't know that we can actually call the cops since he hasn't attempted anything, but I don't trust him as far as I can throw him. I wish I never had to meet him again, but we're going to my mom's store tomorrow, and I'm sure we'll be seeing Stanley. 2. I don't talk about this with many people, but I'll never forget how deeply unsettling it was. So, personal background. I was 18 at the time of this story, and I worked in a large chain bookstore in my hometown in Alaska. I lived in the shady part of town, living with one roommate. It was all we couldn't afford, with a notorious homeless problem. That being said, I walked alone 15 minutes down the incredibly busy street to work, so most of the time I felt pretty confident that if something did happen to me, someone would notice and help before things went too far. I was a young lady who always dressed very nicely, so catcallers were nothing new, and usually got disheartened when I paid them no mind. Once I was followed to work, but the doors were locked to the public at 8 a.m, and I managed to lose him. I paid better attention to my surroundings after that, but this was different. I was walking home. It was a particularly sunny day, late summer. and I am about 1/5 of the way there when I got a really bad feeling. Looking briefly over my shoulder, I saw a shabby-looking man trailing behind me, shuffling at a very languid pace compared to my brisk walk. Since there was a bus stop just ahead, I tried to convince myself it's nothing, you're overreacting. He's just a homeless man boarding the bus. I kept walking. The bad feeling persisted. It wasn't that kick in the gut feeling, but more like something just hovering above your back and not quite touching. You know it's there, but you don't dare look at it. So about halfway home, I looked behind me again because I can't shake my vibe. The man was still behind me, shuffling a good distance off due to the difference in foot speed, but staring straight at me. He made no noise, no yells. He hadn't muttered a word when I passed him earlier. He had seemed weirdly out of it, and now he was trailing behind, ghastly and dark against the light pavement. I started to panic. I broke into a run, and I realized that my apartment was around a couple corners, and I usually cut through a parking lot to get there. So I could, maybe, lose him in the street. I looked behind me again, praying he had turned away or stepped or lost interest and turned back. He was still there. I hoofed it around the corner and down the road, unlocked my way into my apartment building, and signaled the lift. I looked out the lobby window into the street and saw nothing. I remember sinking in relief against the interior of the elevator, thinking, thank God he's gone and it's over. There were large windows just outside the lift on every floor, with a great view of the street below. I happened to glance outside as I started to turn the corner into my hallway, and he was there. Zombie-like, slow-moving and heading towards the complexes. At this point I flipped shit. I sprint to my apartment and lock the door behind me, diving into my bedroom and leaning to look out the blinds. Did he see me? Did he know which building I was in? He shambled down the middle of the road and was now looking both ways, slowly scanning each parking garage and alley, stopping for a moment to look behind the dumpster. For the first time I saw his face, other than the shine of his eyes in the distance. He was expressionless. His features were sunken in, his shoulders and hands were bony and strange. But in his lean, you could see he was hunting for something, and that chilled me to the bone. The man meandered to the end of the street, looking both ways before picking a direction and walking away. I was certain that was the end of it, that he hadn't seen me. I told my roommate what happened, and they drove me to work for the next few days, but I didn't see the man, neither in my street nor the curb where I had first encountered him. The bad feeling subsided, and I forgot, for a while. About 2 months later, I was getting ready to walk to work. My roommate had offered to drive me, but the weather outside was overcast, and I wanted to bask in the cool of the afternoon. I got to the lobby, popped on my headphones, and was about 10 steps to the door when I saw him. Down the street, standing squat in the middle of the road. Still something out of a nightmare. Needless to say, I went back inside and called my roommate for a ride. We drove past him, and I tried not to notice how his eyes bored into the passenger side window as we turned the corner. Moral of the story, ladies, femme-presenting folks. If you have to walk to work through the shady part of town, make sure you stay on a main road. Carry headphones with you, keep a phone on your person at all times, and if someone starts to follow you and won't let up, find a safe destination and just keep walking. 3. When I was 10, I was almost kidnapped. I lived in a great town. Crime was rare and everybody got along. so my parents had always been okay with me going a couple miles away from the house. I have a large family, and usually my cousins are with me, so that just reinforced the whole safe idea. But that all changed on that day. My cousins Mikey and Lily were over at the time. I was 10, I'm a boy by the way. Mikey was 8, and Lily was 6. We told our parents we were going fishing at the creek. That was a mile and a half down the road. We took the dog with us. It was a pretty hot day, so we wore our bathing suits down. After doing the routine snake check, we started swimming and fishing and just having a great time. Until that truck came. It was a red truck, pretty beaten down. But that was normal for our time, with all the farmers and such. It stopped right in front of us, so we got out of the creek to see what this guy wanted. As soon as he rolled the window down, I got a bad feeling. His hair was greasy and black, and he smelled like he hadn't taken a shower for quite a long time. He was a big guy, wearing a dirty white tank top. I couldn't see his pants. He just stared at us for a minute like he was sizing us up. He kept his eyes on Lily for an uncomfortably long time. I'm not gonna lie. Lily was pretty good looking for a 6-year-old. Blonde hair, blue eyes, pretty tall for her age. But that didn't give that guy any excuse for staring at her, like he was some sort of starving animal who had just found his next meal. "You just gonna stare at us or what?" Mikey said, breaking the silence. I could tell he was annoyed because he was probably missing a bite. But that man didn't care. "Yeah, it's a pretty good looking girl you got there," he said. He said it as if she were a prize, some sort of thing to be proud of. "I'd give anything to have me a girl like that." "Well, she's my sister, so back off," Mikey said, stepping in front of her. Mikey wasn't usually super protective of her, but he was starting to tell something was wrong. We started to head back to the water when the fucking creep said, "You kids want to come to my house, see my pony?" Lily had a little bit of a horse obsession, so she was sold. This guy was fine to her, but Mikey and I were certain this guy was going to do something to us, something bad. "Come on, Lily. Let's start heading back. We can just swim in the pool," I said. I was hoping my voice didn't sound as scared as I was. We headed back down to the water, got our poles and the dog, and headed back to the road. The guy watched us the whole time. Lily was upset about the pony, but we convinced her swimming was just as fun. But as we started to head back towards my house, back towards safety, the guy turned around. He was right behind us now. "Hey, Lily," he called out. "If you come to my house, I'll let you ride my pony. She's really cute." It scared me that the guy called her by name for some reason, but Lily didn't catch on. "No, we're going swimming now," she said. She had apparently lost all interest in the pony. So the guy just decided to get closer to us. I'm not kidding when I say he was probably 3 or 4 yards behind us. We moved to the side, and so did he. That was when we started panicking. I whispered to Lily to pretend like she saw something cool in the woods. She was confused why me and Mikey were suddenly so eager to get off the road, but she went along with it. "Hey, look, a bunny," she said, pointing to the woods. "Oh, let's go catch it," I said with feigned enthusiasm. We started heading into the woods when the creep called out again. "You kids are gonna need some help with that rabbit. I'll be right out." This guy just invited himself into our imaginary bunny hunt to get away from him. I knew now that we could be killed. We were still no more than a mile away from home, and none of us could move faster than his truck. "No, no thank you," we said, backing slowly into the woods. The dog was growling now. Obviously she now sensed something wrong. I won't take no for an answer. And as he hopped out of the truck, I could see what he was wearing for pants. Nothing. The man had nothing on but a tank top. No underwear, no socks, nothing. Lily now understood why we had been so afraid of this man. She screamed and I picked her up and ran. The guy ran too. The guy was pretty slow. But carrying Lily slowed me way down. Remember, I was 10, and I was very underweight. And I knew I couldn't do this for much longer. So I put Lily down and climbed up a tree, pulling her up right after me. I screamed at Mikey to get the adults, and he took the dog and ran. I helped Lily up into the tree higher and higher, until we couldn't climb anymore. The guy waited under the tree the whole time, yelling how he was going to get us down, and how he was gonna take us home, and how we were gonna ride his fucking pony. Lily knew there was no pony now, so we just screamed and cried for a good 15 minutes. The guy tried to climb the tree a couple times, but he was too fat. I guess it hurt his bare skin too much. Eventually, he heard our parents yelling and booked it to his truck. We heard it speed away, and a minute later our parents were there, and we were screaming and crying about the naked man with the pony. I wasn't allowed outside for a long time after that. I didn't want to be alone outside after that. It fucking terrified me that a man tried to kidnap, rape us, only 2 miles from my home. Even 4 years after that, I still made my parents or older family come outside with me. I was fucking terrified. I never saw that man again. Our parents filed a police report, but they never found him. Probably came to our area just to pick out a few victims. Glad he didn't get any. So scary, pantsless pedophile. Let's not ever meet again. Hey everyone, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to 3 True Scary Stories, episode 105. Well, I don't know what's going on around here tonight, but it's rather spooky. Well, I say tonight, it's about 4:22 in the morning when I'm recording this, but all the streetlights in my area are out. I suspect shenanigans. Or possibly something just broke. Yeah, probably just that. That, in addition to the fact that the weather doesn't know what it wants to do. It's apparently, I was expecting all the heat to be away now. I mean, we're at middle of August, and apparently we're in for another heat wave, so I shall have to get the ice lollies on standby. Although I can't get the ones I really like anymore. I don't know if anyone remembers those, I apologise for rambling, but, well, I suspect you're used to it by now. I can't get those ones that used to be the Magnum, the Mark the Champagne ones. Oh, I love those. I don't even drink alcohol or brandy or anything like that, but, oh, they were so good. Even squirreled the box away, because I knew I wouldn't be able to get them the following year, but, they're long gone now. Sadness. Well, these things happen. Okay, so, until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.